Prostrations are considered one of the 7 limbs. People just made some prostrations. So if you're watching this recording, you might say, why is he talking about that? Someone asked what were the benefits or purpose of prostration. Generally, in the 7-limb offering, prostration comes first. Prostrations, offerings, confession or revealing of negative actions, rejoicing, requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, requesting them to abide. Sometimes the order is reversed, and dedication of merits. So prostrations are a sign, well, an external sign, but the main purpose of prostrations is lowering yourself, your pride, showing not necessarily to the person, but to the Dharma that is being spoken, showing reference, opening your heart to the possibility of that information entering into your heart, into your mind, and benefiting you. It's said that just like when we come into a room, our grandma is sitting on a seat, or if a grandmother comes into the room, we stand up to show respect. Externally, with the body showing that respect, it's not necessarily to impress other people or to show your allegiance to a particular personality, like the teacher or something like that, but it's for your benefit in putting yourself in a lower position. It's said that blessings enter into the mind which is humble. So in the same way, it's said that in the early spring, grass first grows in the valley, say in a mountainous area like Tibet. Later on in the summer, it starts growing along the sides of the hills, but it never grows on the snowy peaks. So the implication of that is that realizations grow in the mind of an individual who is humble. Realizations grow first in that. And I'm trying to see gallery view. And with people with a certain amount of pride, so resistance to listening, like having a critical mind, saying, oh, he made a grammatical mistake, or he just blew his nose, or she just broke wind or something like this. How can I listen to that person? With a mind of humility, everything that happens that with respect to the teaching is material to absorb into your heart. Whereas with a mind of pride, thinking, oh, I've heard this before, or they didn't explain that right, or something like that, it's difficult to benefit from the teaching. So that's one of the purposes. Also, making prostrations creates the karma for oneself to be held in high esteem in future lives. We ourselves also recognize people who are humble. We pay more attention to their words. Sometimes we put more veracity into that. There are, of course, people who are bombastic and present themselves as very high, and some people recognize that. Maybe people who are very simple-minded, or how do you say, influenced by the bombastic. Someone who says, I am the best, and they say, oh, I must listen because they are the best. Generally speaking, though, as we make prostrations with our body, our speech, and our mind, that creates the karma to be recognized in the future as superior, and to, not to be considered inferior or of no consequence. So if we in our own lives consider ourselves, that we're in a position where other people don't respect us, one of the ways of overcoming that is to make prostrations. You can make hundreds of prostrations or thousands or 100,000 prostrations to the Buddhas, putting yourself in the position of recognizing myself as lower and revering their good qualities, their omniscient mind, their compassion, and so forth. Okay. Is that help, Anna? You'd ask about the.
Thank you, Venerable. Yes.
Yeah. So when we say prostration with body, that's obvious. It can be as simple as this, or simple as nodding your head. Say if you were ill, it's not necessarily when your teacher comes or if the Dalai Lama comes, it's not necessarily necessary to get out of your bed if you're sick. You could you could merely put your hands up, or even if you're so sick, even putting one finger up is enough. But prostration with speech would mean saying praises to the omniscient mind, and prostration of mind would mean feeling sincerely in your own mind the benefits of the object of prostration. In this case, it's not to the personality, it's to the Dharma that is being taught. So to recognize the profundity of the Dharma, to to the insight that Shakyamuni Buddha had to propound the Dharma and so forth. Okay, so we're going to begin as always with a little meditation, and then Anna will put up some refuge prayer in words. But what's more important than the words is the actual meditative state. So what's important at first is to get rid of the clutter for your mind. So let's first put our mindfulness, our attention on the breathing, the respiration, which is understood as one of the best methods to sever the continuity of discursive thought in your mind. Just let go of other thoughts and put all of your attention on watching the breathing. And if you've been successful a little bit in calming the mind from the stream of thoughts that were there previously, now bring your attention to your mental consciousness. So let go of your attention to the breathing, your mindfulness of the breathing. Successively just being aware of the thoughts within the mind, like seeing the clouds in the sky. And as we've done many times, recognize their presence is due to the clear light nature of the mind. Its lack of any obstruction or stickiness. Thoughts can emerge, images, ideas can emerge from the spaciousness of your mind, and they can absorb back into it. Here, it's not a visualization of like a blue sky or crystal clear experience. It's just a wisdom understanding that there is no obstructing quality of the mind. Remembering this is likened to the conventional Buddha potential, our developmental Buddha nature, the fact that we can develop virtuous qualities, we can eliminate the negative. And this is a result of having a life of leisure and endowment that the Buddha said again and again in so many sutras was so rare to find. So in a sense, in accepting that, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, in his authority, the omniscient mind, recognizing its impermanence, the fact that the life that we have now is constantly decreasing in length. We're getting closer to the moment of death. And that we may have used most of our life up till now in meaningless activities. Maybe in many cases, negative activities. Recognizing the possibility that we can use what we have left of this life of leisure and endowment to practice the Dharma, to leave imprints of practice and understanding, to create insights such as renunciation, bodhicitta, or the wisdom understanding emptiness. How much more beneficial that will be than even becoming expert in sports or finance or whatever else. I'm going to take this opportunity this morning to listen to the teachings, which helps to develop the wisdom of hearing. Contemplate, that is to think over and analyze what is being said, which develops the wisdom of contemplation, the wisdom arisen from contemplation. And then on moments when we have some understanding clearly, to hold that single-pointedly, which develops the wisdom of arisen from meditation, 3 levels of wisdom. I'm going to participate, listening and contemplating, meditating on the teachings for the specific purpose of becoming eventually a Buddha, an omniscient being, from which state I can effortlessly and spontaneously, perfectly benefit all sentient beings, however long it takes to ripen their mind streams, lead them out of suffering into full enlightenment, as they have all been our mother in numberless lifetimes, as they have all been kind to me, even when they weren't my mother, even when they were enemies. And because they are exactly equal to us in wanting to be free of suffering and to be happy. Revering that state is like prostration to the Dharma, sort of mental prostration. We can become an Arya being, a Sangha, a member of the Sangha. So with that motivation in mind, think, I'm going to participate this morning in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present, and Anna will put up some beginning prayers. Right, Anna? I think she will. There she goes. Okay, so because oftentimes we may listen to teachings of the Dalai Lama or other lamas who say things in Tibetan, so we'll chant once in Tibetan, this famous prayer composed by Atisha of taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, and then we'll say 2 more times in English. Sangye churang soki chognam la, jangchu bardu dagni kapsu chi, dagi chushe gipe sognam ki, drola penshir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the here it says by the merits, but as the Dalai Lama says, due to the collections that I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the collections, due to the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. And we're going to just do a short mandala. Just there you go. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect, pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, that's enough. There we go. So, good morning. So, does anyone have any residual questions or something that's that you want to discuss before we begin the formal talk this morning? No? So, in answer to a question that Nadine sent me an email, I won't answer all of it right now, but just she had sent some questions, and then one question she said, oh, I got it. So I'll just mention about that. Say, for instance, in the class that she's taking on, what day is today? Sunday. On Saturdays, we call the low-rate class, Awareness and Knowing. Some of you may be also in that class. One of the statements was said that say the horns of a rabbit. Do you know, some of you, do you know what the horns of a rabbit are? Charlene, do you know what the horns of a rabbit are? No? Bobby, do you know?
Not unless it's a jackalope here in New Mexico. No, I don't.
All right. So horns of a
We
rabbit.
have a creature here in New Mexico. We call him a jackalope.
Jackalope, yeah, I've heard that, yeah. So in Buddhism, there are certain things that are considered to be non-existent. Say, for instance, the self. You know, Buddha said one of his major insights, so different than other religions, was that there is no self of the person. Well, there's no, right, in the Mahayana sense, also there's no self of other phenomena. That kind of self is something that seems to be there, we think is there, we conceive of as being there, imagine is there. It seems to appear to us, and our mind accepts that, assents to that. So this is also relevant to what we're talking about in this section about the wisdom that realizes emptiness. The misconception that there is an I is due to the fact that the I seems to appear to our mind, not just our own sense of self or I, but a sense of selfness, you might say, of other phenomena, some kind of sense that there is something really there existing outside, independent of our mind. Now, that imagined quality does not exist. That so-called self of our own being, our own self, or in the Mahayana sense of other phenomena. I say it that way because in the Hinayana schools, in the lower tenets, they don't usually talk about the selflessness of phenomena. They talk about the selflessness of the person. There is a passing reference in the Hinayana to selflessness of phenomena in that my iPad, for instance, is sitting next to me here. That's a phenomena other than the self, right? It is not the object to be used by a self of persons. Okay, so that's one way they can say, okay, you can kind of say phenomena are selfless because they're not objects of use or enjoyment by a self of persons. but that's as far as they go. In the Mahayana, we say that in the same way that the person is devoid of a self, identity, an inherently existent self, that other phenomena, such as our aggregates, or my iPad, or the tree, or the car, or coming and going, whatever phenomena one imagines, they are all devoid of a self. That means an inherent existence, existing independent of being imputed by the mind. Okay, so that's a little background. So the question that Nadine was asking in the class, it said in the text that the horns of a rabbit are selfless. There was some implication of that. So you might say, well, the horns of a rabbit don't exist, so how could they be selfless? Well, selfless means lacking a self. The only alternative to being selfless is having a self. There's sort of a dichotomy. Things are either selfless or they have a self. So one has to ask, do the horns of a rabbit, which is an imagined non-existent phenomena, do they have a self? You know, I think I taught you this Italian mudra before, right? You don't move your hand, you just move it. No, there is no self in the horns of a rabbit, or the horns of a rabbit, which do not exist, naturally do not have a self. That doesn't mean that in understanding that you've realized emptiness. Emptiness is something more subtle than that. Say, for instance, the fact that there is no elephant in my room right now, you know, that non-existent elephant does not exist. That is not, and therefore understanding, because of the fact that the elephant does not exist in my room right now, that particular imagined elephant is selfless, that just follows because it doesn't exist. That is not an understanding of emptiness. I remember my teacher, Geshe Zopa, who taught us many years at Deer Park, one of the great teachers of the Lan Rim. Maybe you've read some of his books, his commentary on the Lan Rim Chemo, or some of the other books that he wrote. He was considered to be one of the great scholars and teachers of emptiness in the Gelugpa tradition. He was Lama Yeshe's teacher. He was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teacher. Geshe used to spend a lot of time on explaining about this, that non-existent phenomena are selfless, but that is not an insight into emptiness. It simply is due to the fact that they don't exist. Okay, so that's a one. I will write back to Nadine, answer to her other questions, but I just wanted, she said she got it in a subsequent email, but I just wanted to share that with the rest of you also. Does that make sense? Anyone confused? Okay, so we're talking on these Sundays. We still have a few classes until I think the middle of August. Shanka was telling me when it's possible that Geshe might return. But even then, I'm not sure if, as Nancy was saying, maybe the center won't open even till after he returns, even if he returned at that time. So we're still talking about this text, the three principles of the path, or in other translations, the three principal aspects of the path. And can I be as bold as to ask someone, let's see, Eileen or Ellen Doherty, is it Ellen or Eileen? What are the three principles of the path? Be so bold.
My gosh.
Put you on the spot. Okay. There's
You
only
really-
3 now. Come on.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm so new.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. That's a good, honest answer. How about Min T?
Yes, you can call me Min.
Min.
It's renunciation, compassion, and emptiness.
Okay, now, would anyone
Or-
like to critique Min's answer there?
Wait,
Like
can I
Min
revise
did?
it? Is it renunciation, bodhicitta? I mean, it's just another word. And then the wisdom of realizing emptiness.
Okay, that's more precise. So you might say, oh, he's just being nitpicking. Is compassion the same? Min had said the second one was compassion. Is compassion the same as bodhicitta? I see a couple of people going like this. So, let's see. Anna Koglin, is compassion, because I can't see your head swiveling or anything, is compassion the same as bodhicitta?
No, I don't think so. I think they're very much related, but compassion is an actual act, and bodhicitta is the wish for all beings to be out of samsara as a compassionate
that's
act.
somewhat close. That's somewhat close. So compassion is not the same as bodhicitta. Compassion, they're both states of mind. Okay. Compassion is actually one of the causes of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is, let's say, a deeper realization than that. Bodhicitta is, when you said it's a wish, you could say that it is a twofold wish. It is a wish to achieve enlightenment, wishing out of the wish that sentient beings be free from suffering. The wish that sentient beings be free of suffering is called compassion. So there's not that much difference there. Bodhicitta is a primary consciousness. I mentioned this in some of the other classes. It's a primary mental consciousness. Compassion is also something which is a mental, what we call a mental factor. It's not a primary consciousness. So renunciation, bodhicitta, and as Min corrected after she said, first of all, emptiness, it's the wisdom of emptiness. Emptiness, I've mentioned in one of the other talks, emptiness is nothing special. Lama Yeshe used to say, emptiness is very common. Everything is empty of inherent existence. What's really one of the principles of the path is the wisdom that realizes that, because it's not obvious to us that phenomena are empty, that emptiness is a reality, that there is not obvious that there is no true or inherent existence. So the 3 principles of the path, my eyes are getting bad. I have to look, is it Eileen or Ellen? I think it's Eileen. So Eileen.
Eileen.
The 3 principles of the path are renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom that realizes emptiness. There are many kinds of wisdom. This is a particular kind of wisdom. So again, as we've talked about before, renunciation is necessary to have bodhicitta. It's not possible to have bodhicitta without having renunciation. What does renunciation mean? It's not in the sense of a father who's annoyed with his wayward son saying, I renounce you. You know, you're no longer a member of the Churinoff clan or something like that. You know, that's my family name, right? Churinoff. So, I renounce. It's not like that. Renunciation is a state of mind that has 2 kind of principal aspects. One is that it recognizes all of cyclic existence, even the best parts of it, God realms, the pleasures, the wealth, the fame, and so forth, all of it as the nature of suffering. Even the best deep dish Chicago pizza. I don't know, maybe you have good special pizza in Santa Fe, or maybe Nadine has in Berlin. She mentioned in her email that she's in Berlin. The most pleasurable physical experience of pleasure, maybe starting with things like seeing the sunset, or a beautiful sky, or meteors, or up to the physical pleasure of orgasm, sexual orgasm, all of the kind of pleasures of the whole spectrum, all of them are the nature of suffering. Seeing nothing within cyclic existence that is real, actual pleasure, on one hand, that's part of renunciation. And then the other hand is the other side of the coin, so to speak, of renunciation is recognizing that it is possible to get out of that situation of being reborn in cyclic existence due to our karma and delusions, and the wish to escape from that in Tibetan is called tardo. That's a very common Tibetan name, like you might have heard of Geshe Tardo or something like that. Tarpa means liberation. De means desire. Desiring liberation. It means desiring to get out of cyclic existence. Without renunciation, there's no way to develop bodhicitta. You might think, oh, renunciation, that sounds really tough. I'm a Mahayanist, I'll just develop bodhicitta. Does that occur to your mind? Claire, what do you think? Doesn't, okay, it's an easy answer. Let's see. Larry, are you there? Is it possible to have bodhicitta without having renunciation? Larry must be off somewhere else. Okay, so the point I'm making is bodhicitta is a state of mind that recognizes the suffering nature of all sentient beings and wants them to be free of that. Without renunciation, there's no way to recognize the suffering nature of all sentient beings, because renunciation is a state of mind that has surveyed all of the experiences of cyclic existence and come to the conclusion that there's nothing pleasurable there, and there's no true pleasure, that it is an unbearable situation to be reborn into this again and again, and wishing to free from that for oneself. So based on that, one is able to develop bodhicitta through compassion for sentient beings, recognizing they're experiencing the same samsara that we are, and wishing them to be free from samsara, just as we wish with renunciation to be free from samsara for ourselves. Generally, it's said that in the Mahayana, it's said that, well, let me ask you what you think. Larry, you seem to be unmuted now, so I'll ask you, is it possible to develop full renunciation first and then to develop bodhicitta?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I think you have to
I'm glad to hear that some hesitancy in your voice. That means you're thinking, okay, even though I can't see you're going like this or something.
I'm in my bathroom, so.
Say again?
So I'm in my bathroom, so.
Oh, okay, that's why you're, okay. So why don't you think you can develop renunciation first and then develop bodhicitta? Because we've already discarded the fact that the possibility that you could develop bodhicitta. Well, we didn't discard this. Let's deal with that. Can you develop bodhicitta first and then develop renunciation?
No, my understanding is that bodhicitta is the wish to be enlightened in order to lead to benefit all other sentient beings and to lead them into enlightenment. And if to be enlightened, you have to develop renunciation first, well, then it would seem to me that, you can't take the second step toward bodhicitta if you haven't taken the first step toward renunciation.
Okay, that makes sense. So, go on.
But I don't, I always thought that you could do both simultaneously. Or you could work on doing both simultaneously.
Okay. So yeah, generally it's explained a little bit like this. If an individual were to, think that they needed to have renunciation to have bodhicitta, and therefore they work very strenuously to develop spontaneous renunciation. That's the thought: I must escape cyclic existence for myself. And that thought, that understanding arises spontaneously, day and night. Generally, an individual who has developed that alone, they at that point they enter into the Hinayana path when they have spontaneous renunciation. That's sort of like the doorway to the Hinayana path. So it's generally explained that a proto-bodhisattva, when I say proto-bodhisattva, that means someone who has not yet developed bodhicitta. They want to become a bodhisattva. The achievement of bodhicitta and being called an actual bodhisattva are simultaneous, right? When you have bodhicitta, you are a bodhisattva. Before you have spontaneous bodhicitta, you are not technically a bodhisattva, although you may have taken, quote, bodhisattva vows. You say, oh yeah, I'm a bodhisattva because I took bodhisattva vows. That doesn't mean that you're a bodhisattva just taking bodhisattva vows, right? Bobby, do you agree?
Right.
No, I mean, Larry, I was asking Bobby on the screen above you.
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
So,
can you repeat?
Yeah. If you take a ceremony with the Dalai Lama, very somber, many offerings made, flowers, words repeated, you take the bodhisattva vows, are you then a bodhisattva?
Oh, no. Words are just words. Actions and thoughts are an entirely different thing.
Yeah, well, even if you wish to become a Buddha for the sake of, during that ceremony, you develop that thought, even you develop a moment, an instant of actual bodhicitta, a thought to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. Are you a bodhisattva?
In my understanding, that thought of generosity and compassion with the bodhisattva is generated spontaneously and pretty much continuously. That is their state of mind, and having one flicker is different from having an entire state of mind, a continuum state of mind.
Right. So we had mentioned earlier when we talked specifically about bodhicitta, the second principle, that we could talk about bodhicitta with effort. You can actually have a moment or some moments or a period of time of bodhicitta with effort, thinking of reasonings and constraining your mind. But when you actually have a spontaneous bodhicitta, that is the defining moment. That's the earmark or whatever you want to call it the qualification of actually having bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta, when it continues day and night all the time. So generally in the Mahayana, when this question is addressed, usually we say that a person will be practicing to develop renunciation, understanding and becoming more and more attuned to renunciation up to the moment they achieve bodhicitta, and they achieve the spontaneous renunciation and spontaneous bodhicitta at the same moment. So if you were to achieve spontaneous renunciation first by only putting your effort into that, there can be the point, there can be the downfall, the shortcoming of then only working to escape from cyclic existence for yourself, achieving nirvana. And in that state, your mind would remain for eons in a meditative bliss without working for sentient beings. Okay, so just
Venerable,
yeah,
if I can ask the question.
You can.
So what I'm hearing you say, if I'm to hear correctly, is that there are different levels of renunciation, just like there's different levels of bodhicitta. Are there formal stages that discuss that? Like, I know that, like at the Hinayana and Mahayana path, there's different goals per se, but I was just wondering if you can dig a little deeper into like the different levels of renunciation, just like there's different levels of suffering,
Yes,
like
yes.
pervasive, all that.
So in the texts by Atisha that Atisha wrote when he was in Tibet, called The Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. Maybe some of you have seen that. That was sort of the prototype of the Lam Rim texts that came afterwards. Atisha was what, maybe 9th century, somewhere around there, before Marpa, the translator, went to India, before Lama Tsong Khapa and so forth. In that text, he mentions that the first kind of renunciation we have is renouncing the happiness of this lifetime. So when we talk about spiritual practitioners, the demarcation between a non-spiritual practitioner and a spiritual practitioner is an individual who renounces, so to speak, the happiness of this life alone. So their goal is at least thinking about the happiness of future lives. It's kind of like what we say, delaying, is that the right word? Delaying gratification, is that the expression? Or what's the other word? Deferring gratification? Does anyone know? Susie?
Deferred gratification.
Deferred, yeah, that's it. Yeah, not delaying, deferring gratification, deferred gratification. So for instance, when I was a kid, when I was eating my alphabet soup, do you know what alphabet soup is? So the little alphabet letters in the tomato broth or something like that. So I liked to eat those letters, and that was some kind of gratification. But my mother said you have to eat the broth first, then you can have the letters. So you have to develop a certain deferred gratification, right? If you're good, you have to do your homework first in order to have time on your iPad or on your iPhone. That's developing a certain deferred gratification. So here, deferred gratification means even if I have to, if I would be willing to defer the glories of this lifetime, fame, I will by not lying, which is a certain kind of how do you say, a certain kind of ascetic practice, right? Giving up lying with the anticipation that in the future I will have a better state. That's giving up the pleasures of this lifetime, the dirty little pleasures, with the anticipation of having happiness in future lifetimes as a result of that. That kind of understanding depends very much on understanding the existence of past and future lives, that there are future lives, and that the experiences of those lifetimes within cyclic existence depend upon our karma, our collection of virtue, of merit, and so forth. So that's considered to be the first kind of renunciation. Who would ask? I think Min had asked, right? Renouncing the happiness of this lifetime, that's the initial kind of spiritual practitioner. The second kind of renunciation, or the main kind of renunciation, is renouncing all of cyclic existence. That means as a result of my deferring gratification this lifetime, practicing Dharma, restraining from negative actions and so forth, creating virtue, working hard in anticipation of happiness in future lifetimes. Even in that lifetime in the future, all of that is still of the nature of suffering. That's a deeper sense of renunciation. Then giving up that hope to find happiness in future lifetimes, but instead working for liberation from cyclic existence. That's actual renunciation. Okay, so I'm just going to ask Min, does that help a little bit, giving a little more detail about levels of renunciation? Okay, she says good. Okay. So without renunciation, without investigating the suffering nature of cyclic existence, it's very difficult to have compassion for others. So if it's the bodhisattvas train in renunciation, as is said in the Prajnaparamita sutras, the perfection of wisdom sutras. The bodhisattvas train in all of the Hinayana practices, but they don't bring them to completion. That is to say, they don't develop the thought, I must escape from cyclic existence for myself. That would be the conclusion of the Hinayana thought of renunciation. I must get out of here. Okay, so renunciation, bodhicitta are necessary, but as the verse that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks says, verse 9, right? Though familiar with the wish to leave cyclic existence, so although you're familiar with renunciation, maybe you cultivated it, and with the altruistic intention, that means with the altruistic wish to leave cyclic, to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others, with bodhicitta, with those two, you cannot cut the root of worldly existence. You can't cut the root of samsara. Just working to achieve liberation, just having that wish, doing good things, avoiding negative things, even wishing to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others and creating virtue and with respect to that, those motivations, those methods side alone will not cut the root of cyclic existence. You'll still remain in samsara. If you lack the wisdom understanding reality, the wisdom understanding emptiness. So make effort in the means to comprehend dependent arising. That was a verse that we've been talking about. So that's kind of like encouraging us to develop this kind of wisdom. How do you develop it? By hearing about it, contemplating, meditating on it. And the next verse that we also mentioned before, verse 10, whoever sees the causes and effects of all phenomena in cyclic existence and beyond as unfailing. What's the word we're using in our low grade class? milua, infallible. Whoever sees that the law of cause and effect on the mental level is infallible, that is, negative karma, sinful actions necessarily bring suffering results, and virtuous actions necessarily bring pleasurable effects, positive effects. Whoever sees the causes and effects of all phenomena in cyclic existence and beyond is unfailing, and who thoroughly destroys the mainstay of misconceptions, walks on the path that pleases the Buddha. So we've mentioned this for a couple of weeks. We get going in a little more detail of that. One has to see, to really understand emptiness, that there's no contradiction between the functioning of karma and its effects, that is infallible, that negative karma necessarily brings suffering and virtuous actions necessarily bring pleasure. We have to understand there's no contradiction between that and the fact that phenomena are empty of inherent existence. When you think of emptiness, that phenomena have no inherent existence, especially in meditation, we talk about different kinds of meditation on emptiness. We talk about space-like meditation on emptiness and illusion-like meditation on emptiness. Have you heard of that? Those of you who have a head on a swivel, you can either go like this or you can go like this. You haven't heard, okay. Claire has not heard. Bobby, have you heard of space-like meditation? And okay, James? Oh, okay, good. Anna, have you heard? No. Susie, have you heard?
I've heard it several times, but I don't think I have enough information about it. It's just there as a word.
Okay, Nadine? You've heard or no? Your voice is very low. You're not close to the microphone.
Same as Susie.
Same as Susie. Okay. Victor, have you heard of the difference?
Same as Susie and Nadine.
Oh, okay. And everyone else. Okay. So I don't know if anyone has heard. So generally, when we talk about the wisdom that realizes emptiness, what is taking place at that time? You may have analyzed, for instance, you try to recognize in your own mind how there is a sense of I, a sense of self, my self-existence. It's not very easy to really apprehend it in a subtle way. Right now, you might say, oh yeah, I know, yeah, I am a teacher. I am a garbage collector, or is in America now we say a sanitary engineer. That's the new correct. You don't see, when I was a kid, there were garbage collectors. Now there are sanitary engineers. Politically correct expression. You might think, you know, okay, on a different level, I am a man, or I am a woman, or I am what are the other things now? I am binary, or I am this or that. That's not, when you're talking about the sense of I, that's not the sense of I that's being talked about. It's something very deep within one's consciousness, a sense of one's own existence. Say, for instance, if I say, Jamie, you're a liar. If I was really serious, you know, I'm not serious now, just say, or if I would say, Jamie, you're a thief. You know, if someone says something like that, within your own mind at that point, you don't think that your body is being accused of being a thief. You don't think that your mind is being accused of being a thief. You have a feeling that I, some sense of I, is being accused of being a thief. Okay. Once you recognize that, you analyze whether that I that has arisen, whether that exists or not. Well, why would you investigate that? Because you may through hearing the teachings or through your own experience, notice that that sense of I that is always there, sometimes it's kind of more subdued. Sometimes when you get angry or you're very attached or very jealous, it manifests more clearly, but you're not thinking about that I. It's what instigates your other delusions to arise. It's what instigates, it's what invigorates or causes you to get angry. It's what causes you to be attached because there is a sense of I want to have something. It's what causes you to be jealous, what causes you to dwell on your unhappiness. I am unhappy. It causes all of the problems within cyclic existence. So you want to investigate whether this actually exists. If it actually exists, there's no solution. You just have to suffer, if it actually exists, if that's the way it is. But if it doesn't exist, if it is a misconception that you've been dwelling on since beginningless time, now is the time to get rid of that misconception. You can realize that you are without that kind of self. That's what the Buddha said, selfless, his realization of selflessness, that's that understanding. So when you investigate that self in various ways, you see something, let's say that the sense of self is there in your mind. You've identified it. That's called identifying the object to be negated, the object of negation. It appears there, and you want to be able to negate it, to cease it. How do you do that? You have to recognize how it's appearing. It seems to be appearing without being labeled. It's just there. Without you recognizing it, it's always there. It's so inherent. It seems to be inherently existing. And then you have to analyze how the mind is reacting to that appearance of the I. They're two separate, very subtle things that you have to recognize. How the I seems to be appearing and how the consciousness reacts to that. Like the example I've given before of Santa Claus, right? Did I mention this class about Santa Claus? Matthew, do you remember? No? So, do you have kids, Matthew? Do you have children?
No, I don't.
Okay, so might you have children sometime in the future?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Okay, so at that time, at Christmas, maybe you put on a red suit, you put a couple of pillows under your belly, put on a white beard, and early in the morning when the kids had come down excited, you walk down the steps with a big bag of presents on your shoulder as Santa Claus. And the children see you and they think they see Santa Claus. Does that make sense? Maybe that happened when you were a kid. Did that ever happen? Yeah. So the adults in the room see you, they see the same thing. They see what appears to be Santa Claus, but they know it is actually Matthew, right? Capito? Comprende?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the Santa Claus, the I. To an infantile mind, the I appears and the consciousness believes it, like the child. There's the Santa Claus and there's the child seeing Santa Claus. So there's two things happening. The I appears and the consciousness, our ignorance, the factor of ignorance in our mind, assents to that, believes that. Oh yeah, that's Santa Claus. That's I. That I really exists. therefore it's legitimate to get angry. It doesn't logically think that, but that's kind of the consequence. Because that I exists, yeah, I have to protect myself. It's worthwhile getting angry. I deserve to be happy, so I have to, out of attachment, I can use attachment. So when you recognize that in meditation, you recognize how the I is appearing and how the ignorance is believing that. In order to get rid of that ignorance, you have to disprove the object that it's believing in. You have to disprove Santa Claus. You have to disprove how the I is there. So you have to use logical reasonings. Maybe next week we'll talk more about the logical reasonings to disprove that. But right now, the point I'm wanting to make is this. Once you use logic to refute or negate or disprove, whatever word you'd like to use, that I actually exists. At that point, the I, when you've disproved that, what appears to your mind is a mere emptiness, a mere vacuity. That means the thought that was centered on the existence of that I, the ignorance that was grasping at it as existing, that I that you were believing in no longer appears to your mind. It has been negated. We say merely negated. The word merely here means that nothing else is replacing it. All that the mere thought in your mind is that doesn't exist. What is the resultant experience in meditation? It's said to be an experience like space. Space has no content, right? Not an experience of space with clouds in it or birds in it or bees or anything else. Just an experience of space-like experience, which is the culmination of the mere negation of that I. That takes place in meditation. When you've analyzed the I, you've recognized it, how it appears, you've used logic to disprove it or negate it, to refute it. And at that point, once it's refuted, all that appears to your mind is a mere vacuity, like space. That's called space-like meditation on emptiness. Okay. Then you might arise from that meditation afterwards. You've, in a sense, during that meditation, there is not the thought, I does not exist. There's no thought. All that appears to your mind is a mere vacuity. Once you've arisen from that meditation, you have an understanding, oh, the I doesn't exist. I proved that. But immediately upon rising from the meditation, the I appears again. Kind of like, at that point, you know that the I doesn't exist the way that it's appearing, but it's appearing. It's almost like a moment of chuckling, like almost like a belly laughing. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's still appearing there, but I know it doesn't exist. It's like an illusion. That kind of consequence of your space-like meditation, when you had in meditation, when all you experienced was the negation of the self, that's called space-like meditation on emptiness. As a result of that, when you arise from that meditation and phenomena again appear to be inherently existent, your own self appears to be inherently existent, but oh my gosh, it doesn't exist like that. That's called illusion-like meditation on emptiness. Even though you're not in a formal meditation, you might still be sitting, you can be sitting, but you could be walking around when you still have the continuity of that insight that the I does not exist the way that it appears. You've proved it in meditation, while you still have the continuity of that understanding, because that can degenerate over time. While you still have the continuity of that realization and phenomena appear to be inherently existent, and it's almost like wondrous, looking around thinking, oh my gosh, look, it looks so real, but I know it doesn't exist like that. That's called space-like meditation on emptiness. You've heard the words. David, what do you think? Have you heard? Okay, I can't see it. Yeah, you're moving your face. Yeah, okay, I wasn't sure that was a picture of you or you were alive. Does that make sense? Have you heard of that before? Space-like meditation on emptiness and illusion-like meditation on emptiness?
Yeah, I've heard the words, but I never heard it explained so clearly. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Maybe you never heard it explained. Whether my explanation was clear or not, I'm not sure. When we talk about meditation on emptiness, there are those two phases. Say, for instance, you may forget that realization that you had and later get angry again, have very strong attachment. What will cause the delusions, the reaction to that sense of I, what will cause them to disappear or to cease is when you have a direct realization of emptiness, not just an experience in meditation, and even in deep meditation. Maybe you have a realization of emptiness, an insight into emptiness, that the I does not exist the way that it appears through applying logic. And again, like I said, next week we'll talk more about the logic involved in that.
Venerable, I
Yes.
have a question if that's okay.
Yes, I can't see who's.
Okay, it's Min. Here, let me
Oh,
turn
okay,
on
Min,
my
okay,
camera.
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask this because I've had this question for quite some months, and I don't want to throw a wrench in it, but I feel like some people have a resistance to when they first study about emptiness, because maybe for me, I grew up in a culture, I grew up in Vietnam, and for the first 8 years of my life. And so the way children were treated, they're oh, you should be seen, not heard. Or there's others who grew up with trauma, maybe their parents weren't around, so they never develop a sense of self. So to hear there is no self is kind of triggering to them, even though I know that's how reality exists on an ultimate level.
I missed one word there. For them, it's what did you say?
Triggering, or there's a resistance to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a resistance.
What does it trigger?
That,
fear
if you
of
grew
being
up
not important.
Yeah, being invisible, they were never acknowledged.
Right.
I know this is a discussion on spiritual bypassing in a way, right? So how do you integrate emptiness without living in an everyday world,
Right.
Working without I don't know how to say it. You know what I'm trying to say?
Let me try to address that, and then if I don't get to the essence of what you're asking, you can refine the question. So let me start there. So first of all, this verse was talking about the need to recognize that the law of cause and effect, that causes necessarily bring effects karmically, is not contradictory with, in fact, is compatible with the realization of emptiness. So here, in order to have a correct view of emptiness that won't fall into the extreme that you're kind of referring to, I'm a little afraid of this. I don't exist. Maybe I never existed. I'm not important. My wishes are not important. So forth and so on. you have to realize, you have to first develop an understanding of the law of cause and effect, karma and its results. And you have to develop what's called a conventional understanding of yourself, that we do exist conventionally. It's not as though we do not exist at all. When you realize emptiness, it doesn't mean that if you were to have an insight into emptiness, you would no longer exist. When you open up your eyes, the room is still there, your tea is now cold, that you'd left when you went into meditation, it was hot, now it's cold. You have to have let's say, somewhat healthy understanding of yourself conventionally. There are there's even worse examples of that you were talking about. Men, oftentimes we say children are to be seen but not heard. There are even some children who grow up not to be seen even, let alone to be heard. You stay out of my way, that can lead to obviously unhealthy kind of childhood. But here, when we're talking about emptiness, when the individual has an insight into emptiness, say selflessness of the person in meditation, that space-like meditation on emptiness, they've proved beyond a doubt that I doesn't exist the way that it appears. And in that meditative session, all that's appearing is a mere vacuity. When they arise from that, they understand what they've just experienced. That vacuity meant the I doesn't exist at all the way that it appears, but I am still here. I, Min, I, David, I, George, still exist somehow. It's then that one can start to understand how we exist conventionally. Before that, our understanding of how we exist in a relative sense, in the worldly sense, by worldly conventions, it's not really clear until you've realized how the I does not exist. Then you can understand, well, I'm called Min, I'm called Anna, I'm called David, I'm called Matthew, I'm called, whatever. And that's the only I that exists. The name that's given to this collection of parts, these 5 aggregates. It's then that a person can start to reach what from a Buddhist point of view is a proper development of personality. It's only then that you can really be called psychologically sound. Until then, there's still a belief in the I, which gives rise to anger and attachment and so forth. When you start to erode that sense of I, even if you don't have a direct insight into its non-existence, even if you have a doubt about it, maybe that's I that I've believed in since beginningless time, or even if you don't talk about beginningless time, even that I that I've believed in all my life, that's molded me, my ego. Even, maybe if that maybe doesn't exist, if you have a doubt about that, Aryadeva, one of the great disciples of Nagarjuna, one of the great Buddhist saints, in one of his texts that's quoted so often, says, just having a doubt about that existence of the I causes the foundations of our samsara to be cracked. I like to give this example. In Nepal, sometime when we were going, on pilgrimage somewhere, you'd be on these dirt roads on that side of a mountain. Has anyone ever experienced that? Maybe even in Vietnam, you have some place very perilous, and a big boulder has fallen down the hill and has blocked the bus. So they say, oh no, can't go here any longer. There's no way around this boulder. So people get out, with sledgehammers and so forth, and maybe dynamite, even when, that's blocking you right now, that boulder, right? There's no way to go on. It's almost like the belief in the I is like a boulder there that's preventing you. Just to put a crack into it, the boulder, even though you haven't eliminated the boulder, even though you haven't knocked any chips off of it. I'm talking about the boulder in the road that's preventing your bus from going. Just putting a little crack into it, that has shaken up the stability of that, and you can have an understanding. Eventually, this boulder can be removed. You put a crack, you put in some wedges, you pound them in, the crack gets bigger. It's like understanding emptiness, the lack of a self. Even starting to have some doubt about it. Maybe it doesn't exist the way that I've believed since beginningless time, the way that I believed all this lifetime, let's say. That already puts a crack into your samsara. That means that continuing like that, you can get rid of that conception of the I, and you can escape from cyclic existence. You can get rid of that boulder in the road, and the bus can continue on its journey. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I hear what you're saying about Arya Deva's quote, that even a slight hearing about emptiness tears into the fabric of samsara. I guess what I was trying to say is that if I was to be a little critical just on like Buddhist talk or philosophy, it's like there is sometimes not a discussion on like the true truths on the both in conventional and ultimate level of, because like you do have to integrate the conventional with the ultimate, like in our daily living. And I guess that's just the point that I was just trying to make.
Right.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, that's what this verse and the coming verses are going to be addressing. The need to find the compatibility between conventional reality, let's say as exemplified by the law of cause and effect, and meditation on emptiness. Say, for instance, in meditation on emptiness, it's as though there's no I. Therefore, the mind might think, oh, there's no karma. When you're at the beginning of understanding about emptiness, when you have a little bit of insight into emptiness, like space-like meditation on emptiness, the thought might arise, oh, there's no I. Therefore, it's like, I'm not seen, I'm not heard. There's no reality. How can there be a cause and effect? When you have a good understanding, on the other hand, when you're not in meditation on emptiness and you have a good belief, to develop faith and belief in the law of cause and effect, conventional reality, it's as though things must be existing the way that they appear. There must be a self that creates karma. There must be a self in the future that experiences the result of karma. So they seem contradictory. It's only after time, when you investigate in depth, that you see that they are not contradictory, that they actually affirm one another. Okay. So, does someone have a question? Anna, Bobby, were you asking a question? Oh, David, you have a question.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It just seems as if the gap between intellectual understanding of emptiness and a meditative understanding of emptiness is so huge. It seems as if the intellectual doesn't really count in spite of the Arya Deva quote. It just is such a long way to go.
Right. Well, let's say on the example of the boulder in the road, someone says, "Oh, hooray! We just put a crack in the boulder," and you would say, "Oh, that's not going to get the bus anywhere." Just putting the crack in the boulder means that they can put in the wedges. You know what I mean by wedges? There's some steel wedges they put in with the sledgehammer to make the crack a little bit bigger, and then you you know, when you're trying to take something out, you have to use a little sponger to take things off your computer or something. You have to pry it in different places and keep prying around until it pops off. Just making a start puts, you know, causes our samsara to shake. Even having that doubt, that's not yet a realization of emptiness, but that's the first step. In our low rig class on Saturdays, the awareness and knowing, sort of like the Buddhist study of the mind, we talk about a progression of starting with the wrong view, believing that the I exists, then having a doubt. Maybe the I exists the way it appears, maybe it doesn't, but it probably does exist that way. That's a doubt leaning in the wrong direction. Then later, making the crack a little bit bigger, maybe the I exists, maybe it doesn't exist. I'm not sure at all. Sort of equal doubt. Then later, studying and experiencing more, you have a doubt, what is called a doubt leaning in the correct direction. Maybe the I exists, maybe it doesn't, but it probably doesn't exist, you know. Buddha said it didn't, Arjuna, all my lamas, you know, people who have realizations realize it doesn't exist, probably doesn't. That's not yet an insight into emptiness. That's just a doubt leaning in the right direction. Then you can have an assumption. An assumption is something that you believe, you could call correct belief. Oh, yeah, I believe the I does not exist. Like for instance, right now, talking about past and future lifetimes. Have you realized, David, that past and life, do you believe in reincarnation? Let me ask you that first. You believe in reincarnation. Have you realized that? That is to say, do you have clear insight? Do you know infallibly that past and future lifetimes exist?
Intellectually, yes. Because, you know, the state of consciousness that you need from one lifetime to the next, you can't go from a spiritual consciousness and have it transcend to the next life if you're only looking at the material cause of that transition.
Okay, so you may have some insight into that, but to say that you've realized it may still be a way off. So we go from wrong view to doubt, leaning in the wrong direction, equal doubt, doubt leading in the right direction, then assumption or presumption or correct belief. I believe that that's true, which may be correct, but we haven't realized it yet. Then we can develop what's called an inference. Through logic, we can experience what's called an inferential cognition. We infer the non-existence of the self, that the self does not exist with logic. That's the first realization. And then when we continue with that in meditation, we can have a direct realization of that, no longer just a conception, even though it's a correct conception. We can have a direct realization of it, the same way that you realize an apple in your hand, you know, it's obviously there. Okay, I think that's enough for today. We're just at the end point here. So let's, before we say some formal prayer of dedication and prayers for the long life of our teachers and so forth, let's try to dedicate these merits in meditation. Important times, 3 important times: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Beginning of any action, you want to make a proper motivation, bodhicitta motivation. In the middle, like when listening to the teaching, you want to keep your concentration and try to keep that motivation. At the end, having created virtuous karma, you want to dedicate those merits make a strong wish, resolution. May these merits ripen in the particular way that I would like them to. It's like taking the reins of a horse and directing, by pulling on the reins, causing the horse to go in the direction you want, not just let it go willy-nilly. So thinking, this morning I've created a lot of virtuous karma due to my motivation at the beginning, listening to the teachings that the Buddha originally gave. They will definitely bring something positive within cyclic existence, but rather than them ripening in some way in the future that is experienced just once and gone, some samsaric pleasure, I'm going to dedicate them to the ultimate goal of my achieving enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Due to these merits I've created this morning, may they ripen in such a way that in this and future lifetimes, they always enhance my spiritual understanding and progression on the path to achieving the three fundamentals, the three fundamentals of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and the right view of emptiness, up to and including my achievement of enlightenment. May these merits I've created this morning not be exhausted until I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. This is what's called conventional dedication. And then Anna is going to put up on the screen our dedication prayers. There it is. So if you can move up just a little bit. Oh yeah, that's good enough. Due to the merits of these virtues, actually it says due to these virtues. That means these virtuous actions that I've created, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception. Here it actually says all migrating beings without exception into that enlightened state. And then the sort of prayer for bodhicitta. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then long life prayers first for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's a little bit higher there, Anna. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, the savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And prayer for the wishes of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, to be fulfilled. O wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in the world, incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Really, the words I beseech in that translation there, the third line, really don't belong there. It's not beseeching him that his wishes be fulfilled. It's may your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then prayer for Lama Osel. Venerable, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, all the Buddhas, for those wanderers in far off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of a far off, distant land, Spain. We make this request, O Lama, please, please live long. And finally, for Geshe Sherab, beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the stages of the path, the graduated path. You who are the unequaled guide, please live a long and stable life. Okay.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you next week. Keep on thinking about the Dharma and see if you can integrate any of the teachings that we've been talking about into your life. And if you have questions, keep your little notepad with you so you can ask them next time.
Thank you, Venerable.
What are